You're listening to Campus Killings, brought to you by AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to check out some of the other great true crime podcasts from this network, including The Murder in My Family, DNA ID, Zodiac Speaking, Scene of the Crime, Missing Persons, Beyond Bizarre True Crime, and Citizen Detective. All of these podcasts are available for you to binge on right now, wherever you listen to podcasts. Subscribe where you're listening to this podcast so you don't miss an episode.
Hi, Amy, and hello, listeners. Today's case takes us to the Florida Agricultural and Mechanical University, known as FAMU, and their famous Marching 100 marching band. I don't know if you played an instrument in school or in university, but particularly in the South and the Midwest, marching bands are a huge part of college life. And while they may be portrayed in the media as being a more low-key part of the university experience, some marching bands function similar to fraternities and sororities. And as we'll see, FAMU's Marching 100 was no different in that regard. So let's get a little background on the school and the band to orient ourselves. I did not play an instrument in college. However, I was a serious flute player, and I think I've discussed that before, in high school. I even went to some type of competition. It's a competition. You perform on your own and you're given a rating. So I think I kind of excelled. Maybe I should have continued. Did you play an instrument?
I played the flute, but only in elementary school.
No. Okay.
I think besides hot cross buns, I don't think I was able to play anything.
That might have been the recorder then, not the flute, just so you know.
Nope.
Oh,
It was
all right. Well, okay. And I certainly wasn't in any type of marching bands, so it was interesting for me to learn more about this at the college level. Before we begin, let's get a little background on the school and the band to orient ourselves. Founded in 1887 with 15 students and 2 professors, the school was one of the first higher education facilities for African Americans in Florida, and the small agricultural school grew steadily into the 20th century. By the 1920s, the school had over 800 students and 100 staff and was offering 4-year degrees in science, home economics, agriculture, and mechanical arts, along with an ROTC program. In 1953, the school was large enough to gain university status and became the first HBCU to become an initiated member of the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools Commission on Colleges. By the 1970s, FAMU saw unprecedented enrollment growth, which allowed the school to create the first Black Archives Research Center and Museum, as well as becoming a full partner in Florida's 9-university higher education system. So again, unprecedented enrollment growth. Very good sign. Today, the school hosts a variety of majors and programs with over 12,000 enrolled students. But the school's largest claim to fame is by far their marching band. Organized in 1910, the band began as a small group who played for military services, athletic events, special ceremonies, and commencement, of course. But the band became what it is today under the tutelage of director William Foster in 1946. Foster created a high-stepping, high-energy show that was very different from anything bands at a predominantly white college was doing at the time. And he also patented over 30 innovative maneuvers that have gone on to become marching standards in many bands today. So this is very cool, and he's differentiating this band. Foster also decided that 100 members was the ideal size for his band, which is how the Marching 100 got its name. Today, the Marching 100 is the most famous American marching band in history and one of the most imitated by other college bands.
Oh.
Yeah, it's very cool.
I hadn't heard of them, have you?
No, but that's what I was saying. I was so interested to learn about marching bands because I didn't know much at the university level. In fact, just so you know, they're so kind of famous that they've been featured in Coca-Cola commercials, participated in inaugural parades of both Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, as well as marching in the annual Rose Bowl parades and performing in 5 Super Bowl halftime shows.
You know what? Now that you're saying this, I feel like I could picture them.
Okay.
Like they kind of like dance around and they're like incredible.
I'm sure that's true. I'm sure if I thought about the Super Bowls as well and things of this nature, I'd go, oh, yeah, that's right. During that halftime show, I remember. Yeah. They were also the only American band selected to represent the United States at Bastille Day in Paris, France in 1989. And since being viewed by millions of people during the telecast, the Marching 100 has become known as America's band. Today, obtaining a spot in the Marching 100 is an incredibly difficult feat to achieve, consisting of several rigorous auditions to be selected. So it was no surprise that our subject of today's episode, Robert Champion, had been practicing his whole life to become a member in this coveted group. All right, a native of Decatur, Georgia, a town not far from Atlanta, Robert grew up in a tight-knit, loving family with his parents and 2 sisters. According to his parents, one of Robert's first memories was watching a parade in downtown Atlanta and being enthralled with the musical instruments and fancy uniforms of the marching bands. From that point on, Robert decided to dedicate his life to music, and he was exceptional at it. He began playing the clarinet in 5th grade, and it was clear to his teachers that Robert was a natural musician. Sounds like it was not clear to yours that you were. Just kidding, sorry. By high school, Robert not only played the clarinet, but also learned the keyboard and drums and began performing with his high school marching band. I'm really envious of people who take the time to learn and excel at multiple instruments. I think it's invaluable in life.
I agree. That's one of my big regrets, not studying language more and not sticking with an instrument.
I agree. So Robert loved the crowds. He worked hard and told his parents that he wanted to be the youngest drum major ever appointed at his high school. Drum major is the highest position in a marching band, for reference or for context. This student conducts the performances and is essentially the liaison between the student musicians and the band teachers. So it's a highly coveted leadership position involving auditions, and usually there are only 1 or 2 slots per band. By sophomore year, Robert achieved his goal, and his leadership led his high school band to prestigious performances at the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade in New York City, the Rose Bowl in California, and other prestigious parades. This is incredible, right?
Yes. And I remember watching the parade this year with my kids, and we were like enthralled with the marching bands.
Yes.
They're so good.
They are so good. So it's clear that we've probably watched him before, you and I. So when it came to picking a college, there was no doubt in Robert's mind that he wanted to go to FAMU and be a drum major in the Marching 100. In 2010, he enrolled in FAMU's music program with the intent to become a high school music teacher upon graduation. And after several rigorous auditions, Robert was elected for a spot in the Marching 100's clarinet section. And only 1 semester later, after an even more difficult audition process, Robert achieved his dream, becoming one of the 6 drum majors for the Marching 100. Why was this position so coveted? Well, I mean, I already told you a little bit about drummers and their positions, but I'll tell you a little bit more. FAMU drum majors are considered some of the best in the entire world. They also hold a fair amount of authority within the band and at FAMU. They are allowed to dole out discipline to musicians during practice, as well as acting as the band police. They were the band director's confidants and even rode in a stretch limo to events while the rest of the band were placed on charter buses.
Oh, wow. That must be so fun for them.
Right. So this is a hierarchy, and they are considered high up on it. According to many members of the band, Robert was a bastion of excellent leadership. And while other drum majors tended to abuse the power they held, Robert reportedly never did. His motto, just do your best and then outdo yourself, became his battle cry for getting his musicians to perform up to the Marching 100's rigorous standards. However, there were some band members who deeply disrespected their new drum major. And now, a brief word from our sponsors. Robert's best friend and fellow drum major, Keon Hollis, said in a sworn police statement, quote, "Many people in the band did not care for Robert because he always upheld the rules."
That's not fair.
Right. Keon found himself facing similar issues as he and Robert became drum majors at the same time, and several members who had been in the band longer refused to submit to the new drummer's authority. It became difficult to keep certain musicians in line, and Keon later explained to police that there was one surefire way to earn the respect of these difficult members, and that was a hazing ritual referred to as crossing bus C, the bus that the percussion section traveled on.
I didn't know there were these types of hazing rituals in other college groups besides fraternities and sororities. But so what was this all about?
Good point.
Was it dangerous or was it
I mean,
playful?
I would argue absolutely. In this ritual, band members entered what was called the hot seat on bus C, which consisted of sitting in the fetal position with a blanket over the initiate's head while several band members beat out cadences with their drumsticks and mallets on the initiate's back. And this could go on for 7 to 10 minutes, in which many initiates admitted to almost passing out during the process from the claustrophobia and pain.
Yeah, that sounds awful. Were there no teachers around?
Apparently not.
There's no chaperones?
I don't know what the chaperone situation was, but I don't think that anyone was on this bus with them, other than the driver. Sometimes initiates had to endure 2 to 4 hot seats before being allowed to move on to the next phase of the ritual. So there's a next phase as well.
Oh, no. What is the next
Right.
phase?
So for those who completed the hot seat, the initiate was then dragged to the front of the bus, had their shirt removed, just so you know, female initiates were allowed to wear a sports bra, and they then had to run to the back of the bus while all members on either side impeded their way by punching, kicking, and beating upon them with drumsticks and drum straps.
Oh, that sounds very painful.
Well, get this. If the initiate fell or faltered at any point, they would be dragged back to the front of the bus to begin the process all over again.
How is this? I'm assuming the bus driver is an adult. How is this allowed?
Well, I wonder if this is maybe at a time when the driver's off the bus or, this is a ritual. It was an accepted ritual there. And while it's unclear how exactly this ritual began, the Marching 100 had a sordid history of similar practices dating well back to the 1980s.
Wow.
Band alumni later reported enduring similar ritual beatings in order to be inducted into several of the band's secret societies. Can you believe this? Who knew this?
No.
In 1998, a band member was reportedly rushed to the hospital for kidney failure after being paddled over 300 times. In 2001, a trumpet player was hospitalized after being beaten by his fellow trumpeters, and in 2011, a clarinetist was beaten so badly during her initiation ritual, she couldn't walk.
How is nobody sounding an alarm here? And I'm not blaming the other students as much so as I'm blaming the administration. If they keep noticing that their students are ending up in the hospital, how do you not launch an investigation?
Well, Amy, it's a good point you bring up. While the band directors had frequently written to FAMU administration about the hazing issues within the band, along with forcing students to sign anti-hazing contracts and sitting through teach-ins with public safety, there were no official policies initiated to address the problem, and so their efforts were met with futility. Students and even some alumni who came back for homecoming continued participating in these hazing rituals. Now, Robert was personally very much against the bus C ritual, and he had refused to participate in it upon joining the band. But Keon explained that this just made him more of a target for disrespect, especially because so many new members had done the initiation and Robert was one of the only holdouts, along with Keon. And while Keon admitted not everyone in the 100 had participated in the rituals, it was one of the only ways to gain the respect of the difficult older members. And for a drum major, respect was vital. We'll return after a brief word from our sponsors.
For 150 years, American Standard has been the plumber's trusted partner, working together to bring your customers quality, value, and always a quick and easy installation for the #1 toilet brand. While our partnership hasn't changed, our appreciation continues to grow, and it's why we've enhanced our American Standard Plumber Rebate Program, which now gives you even more money back on projects large and small. Learn more at LixelPlumberRebates.com.
On November 19th, 2011, the Marching 100 performed at the Florida Classic football game in Orlando. Robert and Keon led the band on the field that night in front of a fully packed stadium. But after the performance ended and the students all went back to their hotel, the disrespect the two had been receiving from other band members was palpable, and Keon decided he'd had enough. Especially after the leader of Bus C, a percussionist named Dante Martin, approached Keon and asked if he was finally ready to do the ritual. Keon he felt it was the only way, and he told Robert about his decision. Unfortunately, Robert was also done with the disrespect, and against his better judgment, decided to join his friend in the ritual. Keon remembers Robert saying, quote, "I just want to get it over with." So the two changed out of their uniforms, took a shot of vodka to steady themselves, and made their way to Bus C, which was located across from the hotel in a parking lot. So you had asked about who was present at the time. Well, at this time, nobody's present. The bus is empty. They walked on the bus where the percussion section, several band alumni, and the 4 other drum majors were waiting. There were 3 initiates on this night: Robert, Keon, and a young woman named Lisette. By the time Keon and Robert arrived, Lisette made it through the hot seat and was being pummeled and beat as she tried to make her way down the bus. As she did, Keon and Robert were put in the hot seat and beaten with drum mallets until Lisette made it to the back of the bus. She later told the police that she couldn't breathe by the time she touched the back wall and immediately blacked out. Keon was next. He later told police he was beaten with drum straps and mallets as he tried to rush to the back of the bus. At one point, he fell to the floor and he was piled on by several members before being picked up, lifted to the roof, and then dropped to the bus floor.
Also, I just want to point out here, this whole thing is inappropriate and horrendous, but you also have males beating on females.
Correct.
To add a whole other layer.
Correct.
Here.
Exactly.
Wow.
While Keon reached the back wall, he did reach the back wall, he was nauseous, his body was completely bruised, and he was missing a shoe. As he panted at the back, it was Robert's turn. According to Keon, he couldn't see Robert until he'd reached the halfway point of the bus, but he could hear the punches and kicks hitting his friend. Robert fell and was dragged by his legs back to the front, where he was pushed into his seat and held there while a band member hung off the luggage rack and stomped on him from above. This is so vile. When it was clear that Robert couldn't free himself, 2 band members pulled him off the seat and launched him down the aisle, where Robert was finally able to fend off the rest of the beating and touch the back wall. Keon breathed a sigh of relief that his friend had made it, but things took a turn quickly. Robert was gasping for breath, and even though someone handed him a Gatorade, he couldn't drink it. He started to panic, saying he couldn't see, even though his eyes were wide open. As band members tried to get him to drink the Gatorade, he passed out, and they began doing CPR on him while someone called 911. Robert Champion was rushed to an Orlando hospital at 9:50 p.m., but though doctors tried hard to save him, he died just a few hours later.
I'm assuming you're going to talk about the cause of death.
Yes, but these are such senseless crimes, aren't they?
You mentioned there was also alumni there. Are these adults or they're still young alumni?
I mean, all alumni are adults if you think about it, because all alumni
I
have to be
guess.
over 22 years of
Yeah.
age. And I don't know
guess.
if alumni were present for this particular incident, just
Oh,
that
okay.
alumni did participate in hazings. It might not have
Okay.
been this one, though.
I'm no matter who was there, the people who did it are the ones to blame, obviously. But I'm just trying to get a picture of the whole scene.
Right. While the student who'd called 911 reported that their drum major had passed out and wasn't breathing, nothing was said to EMTs about the ritual beating. But, as you just asked, Robert's autopsy showed the clear results of crossing Bus C. He had widespread contusions all over his back, chest, shoulders, and arms that had led to excessive internal tissue bleeding.
Wow.
His cause of death was determined to be internal hemorrhaging from blunt force trauma, and his death was ruled a homicide.
So basically, from them beating him up, like his internal organs got punctured and he bled?
Yeah, his organs were bleeding so badly, hemorrhaging so badly, and couldn't be stopped. And this led to
the force of...
Yes, the force of the
wow.
trauma caused this. Essentially, his bandmates beat him to death. They caused him to bleed internally so bad.
Wow.
After an investigation, in which everyone from Bus C and other band members were interviewed, 15 band members were arrested for felony hazing, including 4 of Robert's fellow drum majors who'd been on the bus and participated in the ritual. What is felony hazing? Well, in Florida, felony hazing is a third-degree felony with possible punishment of a $5,000 fine and up to 5 years in prison.
Okay, I'm assuming we'll get there, but somebody's going to be charged with murder as well.
We're going to get there, so I understand.
Okay.
I'm actually almost there. But as we saw in the hazing case of Adam Oakes last season, if you recall, those convicted of hazing don't tend to get very harsh sentences. And that was the case for the perpetrators in Robert Champion's case as well. Yes, I know.
Is it because they probably couldn't trace back which hit actually killed him?
It's possible that, but the crime is actually hazing as well. So while it did result in his murder, obviously there's no premeditation. So should it be?
Yeah, but it's second-degree murder.
It's not second-degree murder because there's no attempt either. It's not a heat of the passion. It could be a reckless or negligent homicide. So manslaughter, essentially. But they were charged with hazing. And of the 15 students who were charged, I'm not saying, by the way, I agree with it, only 3 students served jail time. Dante Martin, the leader of Bus C, had his charge upgraded to manslaughter. Yes. And he was sentenced to 6.5 years in prison in January of 2015. That's kind of standard for manslaughter, which can be up to 10 years.
I wonder how much he actually served, though.
2 others were convicted for a lesser degree of manslaughter, and they were each sentenced to 51 weeks in county jail. 3 of the 4 drum majors who participated were sentenced to 10 years probation with the potential for early termination if the young men agreed to participate in anti-hazing community outreach. The rest, who were deemed to have minor roles in the hazing ritual, were sentenced to a combination of community service or probation. Now, Florida Judge Renee Roach decreed the lesser sentences for several reasons, okay? And these were the reasons. First, there were outpourings of what she deemed true remorse from the participants during their hearings, along with dozens of character witnesses who came to the participants' defense. She also took into account that Robert Champion and Keon and Lizette had willingly consented to participate in the ritual and fully knew the consequences of what the ritual entailed.
I don't love that.
No, I don't love that either. I don't love consent by coercion, but okay. Other considerations included the fact that the participants had immediately performed life-saving measures when Robert exhibited signs of being unwell, and 911 was called within seconds of him passing out. And there did seem to be true remorse, as during the sentencing hearing, several participants gave their condolences to the Champion family, and none of the participants elected to go to trial to save the family from having to endure that kind of process.
Listen, I don't think anyone meant to kill their fellow bandmate. It was just the behavior was so incredibly reckless that how could you not have foreseen that something like this could have happened?
It's egregious, too. I mean, we're talking about violent crimes here. Yeah. So it kind of goes beyond reckless for me. Yeah. Especially you have those few that, hanging from a luggage rack, stomping on someone. That's beyond ritualistic practice to me.
And the fact that you can do that to another human being, you're a threat to the community.
That's my point. I think that there is some level of hazing, and we've talked about escalation in a group and a crowd. But there are certain people who probably demonstrated more of a proclivity for violence. In a statement to the Champions during his hearing, Drum Major Benjamin McNamee stated, quote, "I am humbled and ashamed. I am utterly and completely embarrassed to have played any role. The traditions I now realize can have a dark side." An appropriate thing, I would say. I'm glad that he said that he was humbled and ashamed. Could have gone a little bit further, but still, I would say there seemed to be genuine remorse in these cases. But despite the show of remorse in the judge's sentencing, the Champion family was dismayed at the lack of justice for their son, as would I be. From their perspective, over 15 people pummeled their son until he died, simply because he felt the ritual was the only way he could earn the band's respect. The fact that his death also blew the lid off the culture of ritual violence within the band was even more disconcerting for them. The Marching 100 was America's band. It was the premier top-tier establishment of its kind in the nation. Yet underneath the facade was something deeply sinister that FAMU administration had been warned about, but had done nothing to address. Even more upsetting to the family was that several of the drum majors who'd participated in the ritual beating had carried Robert's casket during his funeral. And at the time, his parents hadn't known that the men escorting their son's body had been partially responsible for his death.
Oh, the audacity of those students. I know they probably felt guilty and they felt like they wanted to maybe like give back somehow, but
yeah, or shame or any number of things. But I agree that was probably a horrible feeling for the family. The family's attorney, Christopher Chestnut, told ABC News, "This is the culture of hazing." The family was also enraged that aside from the 4 students being suspended for a semester, no academic discipline was handed down by the university. And while the band director was initially fired, he was brought back a semester later and placed on administrative leave while the investigation was underway.
it's a big moneymaker for that school.
Correct. Ultimately, the Champion family sued FAMU, citing that the university took zero action against the warnings of Marching 100's hazing rituals. Let me tell you, this was especially in light of the fact that documents showed, Amy, that one of deans had proposed suspending the band for its violent rituals just 3 days before Robert's death. The Champions lawsuit also brought forth evidence that FAMU administration let non-students play in the band. So these were usually alumni of the 100 or siblings of them, which led to oversights in the ability to enforce any anti-hazing policies already on the books. They're not subject to them.
Right. Megan, what was the university's response?
Okay, well, the university countered that they held no responsibility for Robert's death as, quote, "No public university or college has a legal duty to protect an adult student from the result of their own decision to participate in a dangerous activity while off campus and after retiring from university-sponsored events."
Okay.
They deemed that Robert had knowingly and willingly participated in the hazing ritual and understood the consequences as he'd watched Lizette and Keon go through it before enduring it himself, and at any time he could have chosen to leave the bus.
Nope. Victim blaming once again. I do not like it.
Officials also asserted that as Robert was the top leader in the band, he should have continued refusing to take part in the ritual. The school further stated, quote, "Under these circumstances, Florida's taxpayers should not be held financially liable to Mr. Champion's estate for the ultimate result of his own imprudent, avoidable, and tragic decision and death."
That's awful.
Okay, well, I'm just telling you, it's all awful. While this suit was underway, the school did make some changes. The Marching 100 was suspended for a year following Robert's death, and policy changes were introduced that only allowed FAMU students to participate in all future Marching 100 performances. The university president and the Marching 100 band director both resigned in 2012 amid the scandal. And in spring of 2013, FAMU instituted an anti-hazing policy in which all students had to sign forms of anti-hazing acknowledgement punishable by academic discipline before being able to register for classes. Is this enough? Could more have been done? I mean, I am not usually a proponent of zero tolerance anything, but in this case, I'm going to say this should have been a zero tolerance policy.
Yeah, I do want to believe and hope that they no longer do any type of hazing because that was such a tragic event. I can't imagine that any band member would still want to be a part of this ritual.
To participate in
Do you
that
disagree?
at this point, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would hope, but who knows?
I also think, when we're talking about policies, again, I would say that I think more of a zero tolerance, not just if you participate in hazing, there'll be academic consequences. I think.
No, you will be tried and convicted.
And expelled is
expelled,
what
yes.
Also I would think should have been more of the outcome. Now, as for the civil suit, the Champion civil suit took 4 years to conclude, with FAMU finally settling with the family in 2015 for $1.1 million. As part of the agreement, the university created an anti-hazing program specifically for the Marching 100, which was named in Robert's memory, along with displaying a memorial plaque to Robert on the band's practice field.
Okay.
As FAMU's chairman of the trustees told WUSF NPR after the settlement was signed, "We believe that further good can be served by telling of Robert's story and the devastating consequences of hazing." I agree, but let me also say that the Champion family didn't stop there. As we see in many of these cases, Robert's death turned his family into advocates. Only a few weeks after his funeral, the Champions launched the Be a Champion Foundation. Their mission is to honor Robert's memory through providing active solutions to save lives and change mindsets around violence of all kinds. So not just hazing. And they do this through their six pathways, which include support services for victims of violence and their family members, education and training in anti-violence curriculum, with a particular focus on building literacy for underprivileged populations, legislation advocacy on bullying and hazing at all school levels, strategic partnerships with anti-violence organizations, local and national initiatives in the form of essay writing contests and school-wide change drives, and finally, multimedia art campaigns to help younger audiences join the conversation against violent behaviors. They also provide resources for college students to report hazing activities, as well as counseling support centers for those who have experienced violent hazing.
Will that link be in our show notes?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay.
And I also want to say I really like their approach. When I teach crime policy, I always talk about pulling every lever. It's not just about punishment. It's about education. It's about services. And it seems like their approach is a public health approach that kind of draws on every lever. And for our college-going listeners, here are a few tips from the Be a Champion Foundation on how to discern potential hazing situations. Beware of the following: activities meant to earn a place in a team or organization that are inconsistent with that organization's values. Activities that are meant to cause embarrassment or entail physical or mental abuse. Forced participation in abusing alcohol or participating in drinking unhealthy quantities of non-alcoholic beverages, being forced or pressured into enduring harsh weather conditions in inappropriate clothing. I'm glad they brought that one up. Being forced or pressured into performing meaningless tasks. Any forced or pressured performances of sexual acts as part of a ritual or ceremony. Glad to hear that's included. If any of our listeners have already experienced one of these situations and have been feeling isolated or dissociated and don't know where to turn, help is available through either on-site college counseling centers, or you can call the National Anti Hazing Hotline at 1-888-668-4293 to be connected to a counselor. I'd like to conclude today's episode by turning back to Robert. Robert Champion would have been in his 30s today, and his parents speculate that he'd be teaching high school band in his hometown of Decatur, as his dream had been to give back to the high school that helped him achieve his drum major goals. They wonder if he would have had a family. They wonder how many students' lives he might have changed if he hadn't been beaten to death by his own bandmates in 2011 for the sake of earning respect through violent rituals. We hope that by sharing his story here today, we not only keep his memory alive and shine light on the Be a Champion Foundation, but we help spread the word about hazing and its deadly consequences.
Before we go today, if you'd like to support Campus Killings, consider subscribing to the show with an AbJack Insider subscription through Apple Podcasts.
Your subscription will get you VIP access to all the shows on the network. That not only includes hundreds of episodes of ad-free listening, but also bonus content and early access to episodes.
For only $4.99 a month or $49.99 a year, you'll unlock a variety of listener benefits, and you'll be supporting this show in the process.
Head over to Apple Podcasts and search for either Campus Killings or AbJack, and you can start your subscription with a free trial.
Your support is greatly appreciated.
Thank you, everyone, for listening today, and we hope you'll join us on the next episode of Campus Killings.
Campus Killings is hosted by Dr. Megan Sachs and Dr. Amy Schlossberg, with research and writing by Abigail Belcastro. It's produced by Mike Morford of AbJack Entertainment. Be sure to follow Campus Killings on social media. You can find Campus Killings on Twitter with the handle @CampusKillings or on Facebook at facebook.com/Campus Killings. You can also visit the show's homepage at campuskillings.com. Be sure to tune in every other Saturday for new episodes of Campus Killings.